So good evening and welcome. It's just wonderful to see so many people here and interested in this project. My name is Susan Burt. I work for the City of Mississauga. And for some time now, we, together with all of you, with this community, have been working towards a city-initiated master plan for 1 Port Street East. I want to thank you, first of all, for all the time you've put into this, for those of you that participated in the November and December workshops, and thank you for attending this evening. We know that 1 Port Street East is the site of one of the deepest harbors in the northern shore of Lake Ontario. That marina that is in the harbor supports over 100 jobs in this area, in the marina business. We also know that recreational boating is something that is increasing in popularity. We know that because we did a study in 2015 that some of you participated in around recreational boating. And so given that we know that boating is continuing to be something that is very popular, we needed then to know what to do about the marina and how to protect for the future of a marina at the 1 Port Street site. That led us to do a marina business case, which we completed again at the end of 2015. We did this with the assistance of Touristics, who developed a business case for us, and the support of Canada Lands, who funded the project, so thank you to them. The marina business case conclusion told us that there is definitely a need for a full-service marina on the site and that it can function within a mixed-use development. So as a result, we now need to understand how the balance of the 1 Port Street site can be redeveloped within the context of a marina. We've taken all of these discussions that we've had and the information from November and December, and with the assistance of the Planning Partnership, developed a draft master plan for the site. And tonight, we're going to provide you with that draft master plan, and we really want to hear what you have to say about it. But before we get into that, I'd like to introduce Councillor Jim Tovey, your Ward 1 councillor, to say a few words.
This is great. This is absolutely fantastic. Is there anybody here who is not from Ward 1? If you are, could you just put your hand up? That's fantastic. Thank you all. Welcome to Ward 1, or as we like to say, the #1 ward in Mississauga, or Ward Wonderful. That's my new one. This has been quite a journey that we've been on now for the last couple of years, and it didn't really start well, to be honest with you. But I must say that Canada Lands has come around to being a very, very good partner with us. We're very excited to be working with them in a true partnership now. And I'd also like to thank each and every one of you that have been dogmatic about sticking to this, because we all know that this is not a development site. This is a city building exercise, and it's critically important for the social and economic prosperity of our waterfront, probably for the next 100 years if we get it right. So I'm just going to encourage everyone tonight to keep doing exactly what you're doing, keep putting your ideas out there, keep telling us what you like, keep telling us what you think we should be focused on, and I can absolutely promise you that our staff is listening, I'm listening, and Canada Lands is listening. So have a great night. Thank you.
Inspiration Port Credit, we've been dealing with the 2 sites, the former refinery site, Imperial site on the west side of the river, and on December 7th, actually, Planning and Development Committee approved the master plan framework that many of you participated on. So we're really happy to have that in place to guide the future work on that site. So tonight then we're heading towards our next step is to go to Planning and Development Committee, but Ron will speak to that further. So we're dealing with the Harbour Marina site on the east side of the river. And again, you know, we are so grateful for the thousands of hours that you all have given to us through our many community engagement meetings since 2012. And we've actually connected with thousands of people through our website as well, in addition to our face-to-face meetings. So we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, so we thank you. So at this point, I'll hand the mic to Ron.
It's great to be here. I've been doing this for a little over 30 years, and I have never had a group this large come to any of my public meetings. So this is fantastic. As Ruth said, I'm going to be talking about the 1 Port Street East site, and this is a plan that we've been melding the Marina work with the development opportunity on the pier lands that are adjacent to the existing marina. All of the work that we're going to be talking about tonight is still a work in progress. I've been working over the last few months since we last were here in early December, trying to refine the plan, understand what people were asking for, what people really value, and what people really like about development on this site. I show this slide because this is where we started back in December, and this is the 4 plans that have been developed over time before the December workshop. And what we did here, and the reason that this slide is important, is that we tried to break the plan down into a series of layers. We want to talk about the open space network, how pedestrians and cyclists infiltrate and get through and to the site, the street and block pattern, the land use pattern, and the height pattern. So you're going to continue to hear me talk about these layers and how they fit together to create the framework for future development on the subject site. This is a picture of this room from back in December, a little less full, yet we had some great discussions with people over the course of 2 days, and I heard a lot of great things about how development should occur on this site. These phrases mean something to me, and over the course of the last few months, 2 months, I've been trying to take these words and craft a vision statement and a series of principles that really cover these and make sure that we're dealing with them in an appropriate way and a real way. As those of you who were here back in December, we left the workshop with a sketch of what we call the emerging concept. And it is a collection of what we heard about each of those layers in terms of streets, blocks, open space, and so on. So that's where we started from after the workshop. During the workshop, we also had a couple of character sketches prepared to start testing the waters with respect to what things should look like at grade and how people felt they should be treated while they were walking to and through the site. Certainly, the Marina business case has informed the demonstration plan that we have prepared. We are using Concept B from that study, which is the one that's on the screen here. But that doesn't mean that this is the final design for that marina. It just gives us a starting point through which to consider how a marina will work with the development of the subject site. Taking all the words that I heard at the workshop in December, along with the words that are already in the Port Credit Local Area Plan about how Port Credit should develop, we've developed a vision statement. The vision statement is important because it tries to articulate what we think this site should do as it behaves as a property within the Port Credit community. I think everyone will agree that we want Port Credit to be a vibrant waterfront neighborhood and that this site is a vibrant waterfront neighborhood within Port Credit. It's such an important site that it needs to be a destination. Part of that is in the inclusion of a full-service marina. These are things we've heard consistently, both at the workshop and since the workshop. We also want to make sure that whatever development happens on this site is wholly woven into the fabric of Port Credit. Doesn't mean it's the same as existing Port Credit, but that it does have, it's highly integrated into the community and connected with the people who already live here. We know that Port Credit looks different and feels different than it did 20 years ago, and that 20 years from now, it's going to look different and feel different again. Of course, we want that to be feeling great and looking great. This site is unique. There isn't another site in Mississauga quite like this, with the integration of a marina, a development opportunity, and an existing community. So we need to make sure that whatever happens on this site celebrates that context. It's always important to make sure that what's proposed is financially viable and economically sustainable. That not only goes with the development of the pier, but also how the future new refurbished marina will operate and function. Finally, at the end of this vision, we want to talk about the marine and cultural history that is part of this site and how that we protect that, and how we can make sure that the people who may live here in the future and the people who live here in Port Credit now have access to the water's edge, and that there's opportunities not only to live here, but to work here, to learn here, to shop here, and to play here. The next step in our process is taking that vision and turning it into a series of principles that help us achieve that vision. I have 7 principles. I'm going to quickly go through them. These principles are important because we do the layers of the plan that I talked about earlier based on achieving these principles. Logical and efficient street and block pattern, number 1. Put pedestrians first. I think that's what I heard most loud and clear at the workshop last time. We need to have a very highly connected pedestrian realm network, and that's a fundamental principle of this plan. Be a complete community and a healthy neighborhood. That includes ensuring we have a full range and mix of land uses on the site, and that it promotes a healthy lifestyle and provides opportunities for residents to achieve that. World-class design. This site is very important, it's very prominent, and it needs to represent Port Credit as the best place in Mississauga. There are natural and cultural heritage elements that also need to be considered, protected, and enhanced. Innovative infrastructure. Typical infrastructure will not work on this site. This is an opportunity to go with the world-class design, to test the latest and greatest technologies in green building and sustainable development. Finally, we want to make sure that the implementation process is highly coordinated and understandable, and that everybody knows that this is the beginning of a process and not the end. So, let's start with principle 1. This is the street system that we are promoting. It's a highly permeable system, and there's plenty of opportunity through these street systems for viewscapes, pedestrian activity, cycling, as well as important aspects of vehicular and emergency services access. The street system, by definition, creates development blocks, and in this instance, we've identified 9 development blocks. The next important element is the pedestrian realm network. We have, adjacent to this site, St. Lawrence Park and J.J. Plouse Park. We need to connect those 2 pieces of great public space with great public space. The intent here is to include access to the water's edge along the entire edge of the property, and to identify 2 urban squares that will be the focus of more robust public activity. This map also identifies a few sites for public art, because to make it world-class, it will need to incorporate elements of public art. When you put the street system and the pedestrian realm network together, you will see that the site, you can see through the site, and you can see throughout the site to the water's edge. Again, that's something that I heard that was really important to those who attended in December. We're providing multiple opportunities, lots of permeability, and lots of opportunity for great views. Be a complete and healthy neighborhood. Here we have identified 3 land use designations. One, the light blue one, is intended to accommodate marina and marina-related functions. The south half of the pier, we call a mixed-use 1 designation that permits a full range and mix of residential, retail, service commercial, and restaurant uses, and potential for hotels and other supportive uses. The designation closest to Port Street requires office space and retail and commercial uses. That work is supported by background work done by Cushman and Wakefield that has given us an idea of what should happen here on the One Port Street site in terms of the non-residential forms of development, and specifically the amount of office space that would be appropriate here. Again, that's about 6,000 square meters of new office space. Within this plan, we also have opportunities to accommodate all of the existing marina-related uses, either in new space, on-site, or while development happens, in their existing locations. The full-service marina is also accommodated in this land use strategy. In terms of development and building height, we've established a pattern of development that is intended to be most tall and massive at Port Street and work its way down in height towards the water's edge. We start at Port Street and along Stavebank at 3 to 10 stories, a building block that is 3 to 8, and then the southern half is 3 to 6 stories, with one notable exception. You'll notice in the triangular parcel, we have an asterisk, and that is an opportunity that has been identified for a landmark building that would be taller. Now, to achieve that taller height, there are a number of criteria that would need to be conformed with, including an international design competition, a destination use within the building, and a whole host of other impact mitigation measures that ensures that it's the right height, in the right place, in the right design. The intent of the height strategy is that those would be the maximum heights permitted on the site. That any increases in height are the increases from the existing zoning, which is 3 stories, up to what we've identified and subject to a compatibility test. In terms of numbers, we've identified a floor area ratio, or a floor space index, FSI, of somewhere between 2 and 2.5 FSI over the developable area of the site. That generates somewhere between 126,000 and 157,000 square meters of gross floor area. After the requirements for office space, retail, commercial space, we think that based on an average unit size of 90 square meters, that this site will accommodate somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 dwelling units, or about 1,700 to 2,250 new residents when it's fully complete. That is not an insignificant neighborhood, but this site is quite big, and that's why it generates those big numbers. We take great care in providing requirements for building frontage activation at grade. Typically, we are attempting to make sure that the built form creates a 4-story wall at the street edge with taller elements stepped back and above that. We talk about different types of street activation based on the various elements of the street system. We talk a little bit about what private amenity space is required to accommodate and facilitate appropriate lifestyles for the private residents. And we talk about design criteria for each of the building types that we anticipate would be built on the site. And that includes the landmark building. So the landmark building has criteria through which it will be evaluated, but also criteria to make sure that it is an iconic landmark building, world-class standards. The 4 pictures here are the kind of different design solutions you get from an international design competition. This one happens to be on the waterfront in Dublin, Ireland. The plan also talks about sustainable design and green building criteria, quite specific, but again, we think this site, because of its importance, has the opportunity to be a showcase for all the latest and greatest in sustainable building technology. Natural and cultural heritage is an important element. What everybody talked about was preserving that marina function, and certainly this plan incorporates that into the document. We wanted to make sure that the views of the ridge town from land and while you're on the pier were maintained as an important element of what it feels like to walk around Port Credit today. We think that there are opportunities as the marina plan is developed to enhance the quality of some shoreline habitat, either within the marina basin itself or on the outside edge of the marina breakwalls. And again, talking about that commitment to sustainable design and innovative infrastructure, which is the next one. We're very clear in our support for active transportation, making sure there's facilities for cyclists, for pedestrians, for automobiles, and for emergency service vehicles. We want the developer to explore opportunities for sustainable water, wastewater, and stormwater management systems that are reflective of this urban context. Other studies at the city have identified this site as a potential for promotion of district energy or deep lake cooling systems, innovative garbage collection, and considering the impacts of climate change on whatever new development occurs. All of those things are related to infrastructure, and again, we look for this site to be a showcase of new technology. So, as I said, we think about the plan in layers, and it starts with the street and block network, and then you overlay the pedestrian realm network, add the height pattern and the land use pattern, and you have what I would call the bones of a master plan that establish a framework for future development. So, once you have the framework in place, it's all about implementation. We want to make sure that we provide an opportunity to stage this development effectively, and primarily the staging strategy is about making sure that the existing marina functions can stay on the site until new facilities are available. We want to make sure that key elements of this plan, the pedestrian realm network, a landmark building if it's pursued, go through an international design competition to make sure that this site puts Port Credit and Mississauga on the map and is something to be proud of. As I said earlier, this is the beginning of a long process. The city also has a design review panel, and all development on this site will need to be vetted by that panel and go through additional approval processes. One of the things that we talked about is the potential for using the development permit system, and I hope none of you know what that is, because that's something that the planners like to talk about. Again, here we want to make sure that the city is utilizing the height bonus provisions of the Planning Act to make sure that anything over 3 stories is providing community benefits in terms of enhanced streetscaping, better pedestrian realm elements, affordable housing, and a whole host of other community benefits that can be accrued through the application of the height bonus provisions. And again, it's important to note that we're not talking about height in excess of what is shown on the plan. but height in excess of existing zoning, which is 3 stories. Back to our sketch from December. That has evolved into what we call a demonstration plan. If you squint your eyes and look really closely, they're almost exactly the same. A little more highly refined and a little more carefully drawn, but nonetheless, it's a very similar type of plan. We need to be very clear that a demonstration plan is one approach to building out the framework. There are many different iterations that this plan could be, but the things that are constant are the street system, the pedestrian realm network, the height pattern, and the land use designations. The buildings themselves will come as part of the future development approvals processes, and there'll be additional public involvement in that process. We have a couple of sketches. This is what we call a shared street, and if we go back to this plan, that's this little road right here looking from the waterfront promenade into the center of the site. This is the destination park at the end of the pier that we think has the potential to be an iconic park and a great destination that everyone will want to go to. Port Street is an important street, and we think of it as an evolving retail street, and primarily with office space above the first floor of retail. So I want to talk, I'm getting almost to the end. I want to talk about some of the key attributes that respond to some of the things that we heard back in December. Number one, this is a highly permeable site for pedestrians and cyclists, and it includes multiple view corridors. We see this as a site that you can see through and see the water from various vantage points around the site. We've taken care in making sure that opportunities for more affordable housing are included on the site and that it's not just an enclave for the rich and famous. As I said, Cushman and Wakefield have done a significant amount of work to tell us that 6,000 square meters of office space should be required and will be required on this site, as well as a mixture of retail, service, commercial, restaurant, and potentially a hotel use. The staging strategy is intended to protect the existing marina use and all of businesses that are on site today until new floor space or facilities are developed that they can use if they wish to. Any permission for additional height over 3 stories permitted by existing zoning is linked to the provision of community benefits, however those are defined. The marina itself will be subject to its own ongoing action plan and development plan to work out in the fullness of time how it will be funded, who will operate it, what it will look like, how big it is, how much landfill is required. Finally, the development of the pier, the private sector elements of the plan and the buildings are subject to ongoing approval processes. And just to give you an idea, right now we're up here at the master plan level, and this master plan, once it's completed, will turn into an official plan amendment that will be part of the local area plan. That is a public process. We're going to the Planning and Development Committee on March 21st of this year, and to Council sometime in May. Following that, we would anticipate design competitions for some of the key elements of the plan, and then subsequent to that, detailed development applications would be submitted by the developer. Those applications would be vetted by the city's design review panel and be implemented through zoning bylaw amendments. Zoning bylaw amendments are subject to a full public process. There'll be more public meetings to talk about the design of the buildings and how they're to be zoned. Following that, there's site plan approval. It's a city process, but still, it's the intent of the process to make sure that the developers are building what they said they were going to build and that it's of the highest quality possible. After that, they apply for a building permit. The city has multiple opportunities to make sure that this plan is right, and they will take full advantage of those opportunities as the process unfolds. At the same time, there is a requirement for a marina action plan and a marina development plan that will, just like on the building side, will work through all the details of the new marina, including the array of uses and facilities, how big it is, what the docks look like, how the landfill on the breakwaters will be dealt with. So, the message of this slide is, this is the beginning of the plan and not the end. There is substantial work left to do and substantial opportunities for public input and substantial opportunities for the city staff and council to make sure that it's done right. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Questions of clarification, if there's anything in the presentation that does not make sense with respect to the process, with respect to what we've asked you to do tonight. We want to leave the lion's share of what we've got left, which is about an hour, to tap into the brain power of the 200 people that are in the room and to get you to comment on those 5 layers that Ron presented with such clarity in the presentation. Before we do that, are there any questions of clarification, anything in the presentation with respect to process or product that's confusing? Yeah?
During traffic studies, when they mentioned that we have roughly 1,700 people in that area.
So I'm going to repeat the question because we are taping it. So the question for the group is, have there been traffic studies to verify that the One Port Street can accommodate the population projection?
That's a great question. And we have someone from staff sitting way over there. I don't know if you want to come up and give us an overview of what the city's doing with respect to traffic, not just about this site, but in a broader context.
Good evening. My name is Susan Tanabe, and I'm the manager of transportation planning. I was also the manager of community planning when the local area plan was being developed, so very familiar. There were traffic studies that were completed for One Port Street. There's a recognition that there's going to be more traffic added to the system, but from the analysis of the traffic studies, it's going to be able to handle that. Detailed traffic analysis, traffic impact studies will be done at the time of the development application stage, and that will determine the actual network improvements. So in terms of the intersections, what has to be done. But on an overall strategic level, the system can handle it. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is that transportation planning is going to be undertaking a Lakeshore Road Transportation Master Plan to look at opportunities for higher order transit along Lakeshore Road and multimodal pedestrian, cycling, transit along that corridor. So stay tuned. We'll be back out to you to come and get involved in that plan as well.
Can I just, I'm going to I'll go over here, and then I'm going to go to the other side of the room. Yeah?
I was going to ask further to the transportation issue. Is this in conjunction with what Metrolinx is planning up number 10 with a dedicated line for the new transit?
So let me just repeat the question again for the...
Now you're duplicating or increasing the traffic on Lakeshore and minimizing the transportation capabilities of number 10 with the new Metrolinx.
So let me just clarify the question for the video recording. The question that's being asked is that will the work on Lakeshore duplicate the work that the city's already underway on transportation planning on here, Ontario?
So the light rail transit that's proposed along here, Ontario, the Lakeshore Road Transportation Study will certainly consider that. I'm not saying higher transit can go or cannot go along Lakeshore. That's why we're doing this study. It's from end to end. So it's the whole corridor from Lakeview out to Clarkson. And there's recognition that there's different character areas along that. So the road may have to function differently through those character areas. So there's no duplication with what's being done on here in Ontario. However, the Lakeshore Transportation Master Plan will have to consider that. Absolutely. That's an input into that study.
Okay, any questions over here? Yep, go ahead.
I'm not sure that I'm clear on the maximum building height that was proposed for Port Street. I think I heard 3 to 10 stories, is that correct?
Yes.
So the question, again, sorry, I have to repeat it for the video recording. Clarification on the maximum height for the 1 Port Street. Is that right? And the answer? 3 to 10 stories.
Why do you need to go as high as 10 stories? And the reason I ask that is, did you give consideration to a height limit of 6 stories, which is compatible with the height that was imposed on the Regatta building, also on the south side of Port Street?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is the definition of compatible doesn't mean that it's the same. Certainly height has been the subject of a lot of discussion, not only with the landowners, but also with staff and with the public. And at this point, we believe that the 10-story height limit, and again, it's 3 to 10, so we don't know exactly what will happen, but it's less than the existing hotel across the street. And the goal was to create a gradation from Port Street towards the water's edge. And keeping in mind that we're trying to be lower than the existing build form, but still have some height to create some floor space targets that we've been trying to achieve that enhances the value of the property and deals with compatibility. Certainly the issue of compatibility is fundamental to all the thought processes, and in my opinion that height strategy is compatible, but that's a matter for discussion.
Thank you.
So just before we go on with questions, I'm going to just take a couple more because I want to leave as much time as we can to tap into the brain power of 200 people that are in the room. The purpose of the exercise after we break is that we do want to drill down into those 5 layers, and one of the layers is height. And so we're asking specifically on the drawings that are on the table is, first, what do you like about the streets and block plan or the public realm plan or the height or the land use, the view corridors, but also how could it be improved? So that's the time when you can bear down and say you don't like the height that Ron described, you think it could be improved by reducing the height or increasing the height or whatever comments you want to share with us in that regard. So that's the purpose of that. So I'm going to just take 2 more questions. You can ask questions all night long. I'm going to get the room started on the exercise, but obviously we're here. But I'll just take 2 more questions of clarification on the presentation and then move to the workshop. Yep, in the front.
Yes, I heard the phrase shared street. I heard privileging the pedestrian. As I understand, there's no true winner, if that's what it's called in Canada. Would this be the first one? Is it truly a multimodal shared space?
So the question of clarification is it true, are there any shared streets, or they're technically referred to as WUNRFs, in Canada, in Toronto? Would this be the first one that we're planning in Port Credit?
Sadly not the first. There's one in Toronto, just south of Queen in the West Don Lands. And there's another one in the thriving metropolis of Fonthill. So, not the first, but that's the intent, that it's a shared street, a WUNRF. I'm not Dutch, so I'm sure I'm not saying that right. But pedestrian priority, cycling priority over the automobile for sure. Obviously open for emergency vehicle access, and if required, access to underground parking garages. But fundamentally, pedestrian cyclist route.